I remember when we started talking about the Division 3 as a possibility, there was a lot of pushback and a lot of skepticism because it simply seemed like Ubisoft had moved on, especially massive. There were changes in the leadership, there were, all kinds of different announcements that pertain to different games that were not the Division. And, finally, I think somebody finally got a little bit of sense and said, oh, you know what, maybe we should probably attend to the 40 million players that we have in our pipeline and in our ecosystem. I think the distractions of the big name franchise games have basically done some of these studios in, or at least publishers in, for the most part. I mean, you got to think about it. Why would you, as a publisher who is already established, who already has an established franchise, or at least one of many of your shooter established franchises, and I'm talking about the Tom Clancy genre, why would you opt for doing or making a game that is going to be cost heavy on your part, and then you still have to share majority of your profits with somebody else? I guess maybe the drive to try to replicate Spider-Man's success from the PlayStation time, maybe that's probably one reason a lot of people went ahead and did this. There are just so many reasons or so many possibilities you could say. But at the end of the day, when you're sitting on 40 million possible players that you can reach out to, that you can advertise to, that you can basically keep in the loop for your game, I think it was probably one of the more interesting, or I guess let me put it this way, one of the more asinine business ideas to actually ignore that community and then go ahead and start making games for other communities out there, especially a community out there that is dissatisfied with the product, or with at least what has been being served to them in the last few years. Go ahead and think about it. Star Wars, right? Star Wars. Let's go ahead and look at, say, what has Star Wars suffered from for the most part? Games with poor stories, games that the main characters have basically been thrown in the gutter and put on the back burner because the writers and because the studios have no clue nor idea what it is that they're trying to convey. At least this is what the Star Wars community says. I like some Jedi stuff, and I'm not really too into the rest of most of the Star Wars pieces. So this is just what we're hearing from the Star Wars community. In the case of Avatar, there almost is no community. I mean, James Cameron releases one of these movies once every 15 years or something like that. So I just didn't understand what kind of bet it was. Taking the creative director from the Division 1, to make this bet and go this direction, to me, had always seemed a little strange. But anyways, at the end of the day, if you actually come back and you actually say, okay, what are my options? What are the options here? What's going on? It eventually starts to, in my opinion anyways, make sense. That this was probably a decision that they thought was going to provide some monetary gain. And to my knowledge anyways, I don't know how that has panned out. I think, yes, it's added games to their library in Ubisoft, but it has probably not brought in the profits that they would have loved or expected. So here is the thing. I think the experience of this lesson has taught them something very valuable. In fact, even when there was talk that there were no plans for a Division 3, I think that probably ended up resonating, looking and saying, man, we just blew hundreds of millions of dollars on cost on 2 games that we don't necessarily know how they're going to pan out. However, even the Division 3 should not be costing that much, seeing that they have expertise systems, they have, code bases, all of that stuff already built. Now, keep in mind, yes, they're going to make changes. They're going to have to build, in my opinion, a new location. But one thing about building a video game is, you could tell that a lot of the DNA of the Division 1 was in the Division 2. I know some people might say, well, not enough. I get it. Changing things up and making things super new can be somewhat abrasive. But you cannot deny the fact that, this game actually got pushed out much faster than the Division 1 actually did from ground up. Think about it. They launched a Division 1 in 2016, and a week or 2 weeks after, they pulled the team aside and started crafting the Division 2. And by 2019, a new game was born. So that being said, it took them longer to actually go ahead and develop and release the Avatar game than it took to, well, possibly, I think it did. I don't know when they would have been prototyping that game. And even the Star Wars game is even evident of how fast they can actually produce, at the Ubisoft pipeline, because they have multiple studios working on these games. So I hope Ubisoft Massive and Ubisoft as a whole realize that the 40 million players that they've been able to cultivate and 40 million players that they've been able to basically bring into the ecosystem are actually much more important than a lot of these other things that they may be chasing. Nothing wrong with chasing them, but it's hard to put your biggest player base on the back burner. The Division, believe it or not, is Ubisoft Massive's biggest player base. And this is the player base that needs to be, in my opinion anyways, prioritized. Not because I want us to be entitled, but because, as a company, what is their purpose here? They're here to make money, right? And so that's why they need to prioritize this big audience. Thanks for watching the video. Appreciate you guys' time and audience. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.